What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, I'm talking about my top 5 mistakes that anglers make during summertime fishing. Summertime fishing. Like me, most of you probably think hot fishing. Dog days of summer. I'm gonna get up early. I'm gonna go out late, right? So for me, my number one mistake that anglers, and I'm guilty of all these, I got 5 of them for you, but through the years, these are things that I've learned. So for me, my number one mistake that anglers make during the summertime fishing time is going to be timing, right? Everybody wants to get up super early, get out before that sun gets up. They wanna hang out most of the day and then go out in the evening, right? Those low light, which is great, right? You will catch fish. But honestly, you're giving up the largest part of the day, the biggest time of the day, when that sun is high and that heat is just scorching. Those fish a lot of times are chewing. So timing, so don't necessarily give away the chunk of middle during the middle of the day. Some of my best days of fishing in the summertime, you know, July, August, are that 11:30 to like 2:30 time, right? Some of that hottest time of the day, hottest hours of the day, even though I'm dripping sweat, I got sweat in my eyes, I typically have better or more bites that time of the day than I do at first light or into the evening. So if you're one of those guys that gets up, launches at dark, fishes just for a few hours, as the sun comes up, you put it on the trailer, don't make that mistake, because there are some good hours ahead of you. If you can brave the heat, you know, stay hydrated, you will catch more fish. And on the flip side, the guy that goes out in the evening time, if you get out just a few hours earlier, you're gonna give yourself a lot more opportunities to find those schooling fish and really have a productive day out on the water. Again, talking about braving the heat, you gotta be out there. But again, some of those best days I've had in the summer are in the hottest times of the day, okay? So even though you're hot, sweat, drip in the eyes, it's just hot out, don't shortchange yourself. Make sure you're out there during those hours. And again, I kind of touched on it a little bit. For me, again, this is my opinion, when that sun is highest and hottest, it congregates those fish the most. Now, what I mean by that, if you have sun setting and you know, we got sun setting right here, right? So you have shade all the way through here. It's all kind of low light. Those fish are gonna be dispersed. They're gonna be out there cruising, hunting, whatever they're doing, right? When that sun is high, it's gonna put that shade line within just a couple feet of the bank, if not inches of the bank, right? So instead of having to fish this whole area, you know those fish are gonna be in that shade, up there, out of the heat, where they can ambush from. So with that sun high, like I said, even though it's hot, it congregates those fish and makes them easier to catch. So number 2 mistake or tip for you guys, since we just talked about it, we're gonna talk about shade. Not all shade is, in my mind, the same, right? We just talked about how that sun gets high, it really congregates those fish. You know, one of the key bites I used to get on when I was fishing a bluff wall fishery was when that sun, high noon, would get up, it would put a shade line on bluff walls that were only like a foot or 2 wide. And if you weren't getting your bait in that shade, basically touching that wall, you weren't getting bit. But as that sun rose and set, that shade line got a lot wider and you had a lot more area to physically fish. So with that shade narrow, that sun high, it really congregates those fish. But getting back to shade, that not all shade is created the same, or I don't treat it all the same. I just kind of explain that, right? This whole bay could be shady. But if there's an area, I mean, sometimes the area is super shallow, right? Sometimes that shade line is right up on within inches, you know, maybe 6, 8, 10 inches deep, right? Those fish are way up there shallow. And a lot of times it's because not only is it cooler, can they ambush from it, but also sometimes up there you have more oxygen in the water. So don't forget or forget about that super shallow shade. But again, I'm looking, the hottest part of the days, I'm looking for those docks that have shade, those laydowns that produce shade. Again, shade that's closer. If I have this point right here, I got a shade line coming out, there's a break right here, that's gonna be better to me than just a shade line that runs the shoreline, right? This has a point, some little deeper water. Those fish are gonna congregate on there. Maybe I'm throwing top water. But for me, when I'm looking around, pay attention to everything, but know that there's better shade areas than others. Now let's talk about docks. So my number 3 tip or mistake that anglers, myself, have made are docks. Again, I've kind of touched on it quite a bit so far in this video, but we're talking about shade. If I'm looking at a dock line, say there's 10, 12, 15 docks, some have just a cover, some have a boat lift, some have metal pilings, some have wood pilings, some docks are shallow, some are deep. Where do I start? Again, they're not all created equally. So for this time of the year, I'm looking for docks that have wood pilings. I'm looking for typically the biggest dock, the dock that's gonna throw or cast the biggest shadow, have the most shade. That's gonna keep that water cool, and those fish are gonna pull to it, right? Now on that dock, I'm looking for the deepest back, the farthest back, darkest spot on that dock, because that's gonna be where typically the biggest or the most fish congregate, are on those key spots on those docks. So I'm looking for wooden docks. To me, the wood, a lot of times they're older docks, even if they're newer docks, they don't transfer that heat as quickly or as much as a metal piling, right? Those metal pilings are gonna change temperature, they're gonna fluctuate a lot more than a natural wood dock. So I'm looking for those pilings. Again, I'm looking at those docks, I'm looking for areas to skip. I wanna get back in there in that shade, that deepest, darkest spot. I'm looking for docks that have quite a few pilings, a lot of cover for those fish. And then again, I'm looking for that biggest dock that has the most shade, okay? The largest platform, the most shade, and then last but not least, I'm looking for that dock that kind of fits that criteria, that's the closest to deep water. So if I have a run of docks, on the end is the deep water, that's a wooden dock, biggest dock, lots of pilings, that's gonna be the money dock. And then again, when I'm fishing that area, I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna throw reaction, and then I'm gonna throw finesse. So I'm looking for those key pieces of shade on that dock. So that was my number 3 tip or mistake that a lot of anglers make. They treat all docks the same, and you guys have probably all noticed or all seen it. You'll fish a row of docks and there's only a couple of them, maybe a few of them, that really hold fish. So number 4, I talked about on that dock thing that last tip, that I start off throwing reaction. And I think that's a really big mistake that a lot of anglers make this time of the year. They'll start out early, they'll get out in the evening time and they'll throw reaction, maybe it's top water or chatterbait or whatever it may be, but then they give up too early. If I'm going through a row of docks and I see a good dock, I'm throwing, I might throw a frog, I might throw a shaky head, I might throw a whopper plopper, but I'm gonna start off with throwing my frog, my whopper plopper, maybe an underspin or a chatterbait. I'm gonna try and trigger those fish, generate more bites. But in my gut, if I don't get bit on that, and I feel like this is the dock, this is that, you know, it meets all those, checks all those boxes I talked to you guys about earlier, you know, deep water nearby, wood piling, bid platform, lots of shade, then I will slow down. That's when I make that transition. But a lot of guys, they'll make just a couple casts with the reaction, and then they'll pick up a, let's say like a shaky head. They'll get a couple bites, and boom, now they're throwing that shaky head the rest of the day, when realistically, the best thing would be to cover more water, find those good docks, fish them, and then go back through and then slow down and fish them with finesse. So don't be too eager to put those reaction rods down and pick up the finesse. Okay? Now my number 5 tip, night fishing. You guys know that Matt and I, we do night fishing. We used to do a lot more. Now that our families are getting bigger and stuff, we don't do it as much, but we used to spend a lot of nights out chasing bass, throwing big wake baits, throwing big swim baits, big worms, big jigs, chatterbaits, even cranking at night. It works extremely well. Especially, maybe it's a full moon in July, you're gonna have a lot of visibility. It's lit up, it's almost like daytime. You fish your favorite spots that you would in the daytime. But nighttime is a great way to escape the heat, escape the pleasure boaters, the boat traffic. But a lot of guys just don't do it. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing or what, but you know, I live close to a boat ramp, so unfortunately, when I'm not fishing, I drive by it and I can see, you know, if there's a bunch of boats out or not. And a lot of times, as soon as that sun starts setting, within the first 30 minutes, those boats are coming to the launch ramp, they're pulling off. And the first couple hours after that sunset can be really, really good. So if you're a guy that is afraid of the dark or afraid of nighttime fishing, stay out just a couple hours later and you'll be surprised at how sometimes that lake just comes alive. Now, if you're a guy that is fishing a lake that has an algae bloom, you know, out west, Clear Lake would get an algae bloom, or I can think of like Okeechobee has really bad algae blooms. A mistake that a lot of guys make, if you're a nighttime fisherman, as those air temps cool and those water temps cool, those blooms really kind of just settle towards the bottom. So if you're a nighttime angler and you're throwing a jig or a bottom swim bait or something, you know, big worm, something like that, a lot of times those fish will kind of, maybe it's your favorite rock pile, your favorite point, ledge, whatever it may be. A lot of times those fish will kind of vacate that area and get to some cleaner water as that bloom kind of settles down and really chokes them out. So if you're a guy that loves summertime fishing, you love nighttime fishing, you're catching them there in the day and you go there at night and you can't get a bite, think about some of those algae blooms and what it could be doing or how it could be repositioning your fish. But guys, there it is. There's my top 5 tips or mistakes for summertime fishing, especially the month of July, August. It's hot out, but make sure, guys, that you're picking the right docks, that you're fishing sometimes in the heat of the day. If your body can stand it, fish in the heat of the day. A lot of guys give up, right? They go put it on the trailer, they come back in the evening for the evening bite, which is great, right? You'll catch fish, but like I said, sometimes those middle of the day bites are the best summertime bites that I've ever had. You know, I can remember it was like 1 o'clock, super hot, and I found a mat that was just alive, and it didn't come alive until like 11:30, 12 o'clock, and we were blasting them on frogs, blasting them on wake baits. It was so much fun, and it's crazy how quickly you forget about the elements. You know, in the wintertime, how cold you are, how cold your hands are. In the summertime, how hot you are in that sweat when you're getting bit. When those fish are eating and you're setting the hook and catching fish, pretty soon you start forgetting about the elements and how cruddy you feel out there in the heat or the cold. But guys, like I said, there it is, my top 5 mistakes for summertime bass fishing. I'm guilty of making all those. That's how I've learned from it. Hopefully that helps you guys. If you I'd like to hear down in the comment section if you guys have any mistakes or anything you've learned for summertime fishing, maybe night fishing or just fishing during the heat of the day, the shade, which docks you like. I'd like to kind of hear your opinions on that. But guys, as always, thank you for the support. If you like this video, you like summertime fishing, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.